You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
The flatulent noises you may hear during this episode of Friends Talking Nerdy are indeed coming from the Friends Talking Nerdy studios, but rest assured, folks, they are not coming from the rectums of your intrepid host. Welcome to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd here, joining you for another lovely week of intellectually stimulating entertainment. Sitting next to me, we have the greatest legal mind of the Pacific Northwest. We have Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. What have you been up to this week?
Do you throw it to me first? I mean, what about you? I'm interested in you.
You always do that. Every time I try to throw it to you, you're like, no.
So do you want me to go first?
I can go first.
No, I'll go first. You made it a big deal.
Okay,
we'll
all right. We'll do it this way this time. See how it goes.
Okay. Anyway, another week of work for me. So far, so good. I did have some interesting interactions with some Canadian geese that love to hang out by my work, and it's near. And again, I'm not naming the work or the general location, but if you know where Swan Island is on Portland, you have a general idea. But had a couple fun interactions. One I just saw from a distance. There was at the entrance of one of the big places down there, right near the entrance, this goose was just sitting there, and then a truck was trying to pull in, saw the goose and was going slowly, but the goose at first was just like, I'm going as fast as I can, sir. I'm going as fast as I can, and then all of a sudden it started flapping its wings, and you could just imagine, like, fine, sir, I'm moving faster. Is this what you want from me? Where is your manager?
Yes. So the cranky old man.
Something.
Goose.
Yeah, but I did have a fun interaction with them personally myself.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I had some trail mix that I brought to work, thanks to Professor Aubrey, and was passing by the geese, and I thought, why not give it a try? Pulled out the trail mix, grabbed a couple, because especially for an animal like that, a treat is fine on occasion, but you don't want to give too much. But I started tossing some nuts around, and then one got really close to me. Like, if it was a cat or a dog, I could have petted it, but doing what it did was enough respect. Me trying to pet the thing when it doesn't know what the fuck I'm doing, would not have been cool. But the goose itself was funny because, like, they primarily are, like, eating in the grass.
Yeah.
And it was funny because, like, it was a little bit hot that day, and the goose is panting, but around its beak was, like, green. And the goose was acting like a 5-year-old, like, on a Kool-Aid binge. Can I have some more? Can I have some more, sir? And then I even held my hand out with the nut in my hand. It's like, I'm not going to fucking touch it. You put it on the ground. Okay, you put it on the ground. I'm going to eat it up. Yay!
That sounds so very cute. It's so nice to have those little moments that are beautiful and touching.
Indeed. And the drinking game has started, folks. And we've got a couple in there for you. Hopefully by the end of the episode, you'll remember your name. But it is definitely nice being able to see them. I mean, there are some squirrels that are by there as well, but the squirrels are a little more apprehensive. The geese are just fun. I don't bother them as much as I walk through their territory trying to avoid their crap on the ground.
Right. Yeah. They do love the spring shoots, right? Sort of, I think all animals that eat grass and stuff are really excited at this time of year because everything has started growing again, and so it has these really delicious young succulent shoots that they can eat off the top of the grass.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was, my big thing. Also met a new friend this week, Rhonda the Vet. Hello to Rhonda the Vet. How are you doing out there?
Hey, Rhonda the Vet.
New fan of the show. So, so that's been my week. So you've had some time to think. What has your week been like?
Well, like you, it was a work week for me, and I have a big project due on Monday. It's currently Thursday as we record this, so I have a couple days left. But I'm quite, one, sick of doing it, honestly. And two, sort of in the crunch of seeing if I'm going to even be able to get it done by then. So I'm pretty much working every waking moment, thinking about work a lot. I guess I did have some fun things happen.
Mm-hmm.
What were they?
Costco trip, I guess.
Oh, right. I joined Costco. That was cool. So, yeah. Probably the other thing that I'm thinking the most about is my upcoming trip to festival. It is the first big festival of the year, and that out here in the Pacific Northwest is SOAK, which is the regional Burning Man. So it's the first big Burning Man event of the year. So I went last year and I had a really good time. So I'm going back this year, and it is the Memorial Day week, basically. From Tuesday to Tuesday, I will be there. And I ordered some things online that I needed, and we went to Costco, and I got, some stuff that'll be useful. And I pulled out all my bins and all my camping stuff, and I've kind of piled it all up in the studios here, and just waiting, till my work is done so I can
get the fudge on out,
organize everything, get ready to go. It's not nearly so difficult to pack for as Burning Man, but you still are. So it's in the Tye Valley here in Oregon, which is just east of Mount Hood, and you have to bring your own water. You have to process your own gray water. You have to bring all of your own food. You use porta potties. There's no showers. There's no running water. It's very rustic, but it's a huge party with 2,000 people.
So you can get an STD and athlete's foot there.
Wow, that's really hopeful.
I'm kidding. I'm an asshole, folks.
We mock what we don't understand.
Exactly. And I don't understand a lot, as we've had over 300 episodes of proof for you all at home.
Yes, so that's been on my mind. And then, you and I have talked a little bit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees.
Yes, we have. Kind of a tradition on the show, because it's one of those top. I mean, I make no bones about it. I love music of all forms. While I do primarily love rock music, a good musician's a good musician, no matter what genre they're going to be in. And if they speak to you, then it's great. And I think, since we have a platform here, small though it may be, I think the benefit of talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the fact that a number of these artists that are being nominated aren't on the lips of casual music goers today. For as much as the Rock Hall has a lot to critique about it, and boy does it, I think its main draw of continuing to educate the public on the history of American popular music, I think that is a thing that should be, followed up on by having that conversation, by talking about the past.
Yeah, I think a lot of our institutions do that. I think, the Kennedy Awards are similar. There's lots of similar honors that we can use to really gauge what's going on in the world. And this is one of them.
Yes. And, you know, and also too, like I said, with a number of these names for like casual music fans or young music fans, they may not necessarily know who, you know, artist A or artist B is. And this is the perfect opportunity to, you know, if, you know, we as podcast hosts happen to know something about this person, say something nice to where someone else can say, I think I will check them out, because that, at the end of the day, I think is the mission and something that should be supported, whether it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, etc., etc., etc. But let's talk about the people who got inducted, and then after that we can talk about a couple of the interesting choices on bands and musicians that didn't make it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, the performer category. I will name the names. If you have a thought, feel free. I mean, obviously, this is not our main segment, so you will not get our detailed, you know, everything you need to know about it, thoughts from us, I guess. But name number 1, Kate Bush.
Love Kate Bush. Just really love her. Now, do I see her as a rock and roll star? No, absolutely I don't. I see her more as a new wave, sort of British new wave.
I'm not familiar with her music at all, except for that song that was on Stranger Things that was a viral hit on TikTok, that I guess brought her back into the charts. So there's that at least. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame does have a history of striking when the iron's hot, you know, and I think they realize that how many people, when in history are you going to have a chance to have this many people talking about Kate Bush again?
Right.
You know, which if you are a Kate Bush fan, please do not take that in any way, shape, or form as a knock on her talent. Again, I haven't heard her work. I've heard one song and it didn't quite work for me, but I'm not insulting her. But, you know, this is more of because of Stranger Things than anything else. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think that is a weakness on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too, that they are reactionary with their voting and not necessarily voting to get the most qualified people in. All right, next one, Sheryl Crow.
Okay, Sheryl Crow, I do not like. I have never liked her. It's not like I don't like her personally, I don't know her. But I don't like her music. It doesn't entertain me. It doesn't make me feel anything except annoyance.
Full disclosure, I would put her like in a category like with Taylor Swift in terms of my enjoyment. There are a couple of songs she's done that I like, but I'm not going to listen to an album. I'm not even going to buy for her greatest hits. You know, it's just search out if I even have the desire to listen to any of her songs, I know where to find them. You know, she does have a history though. She was a backup singer for Michael Jackson for a while. So, that's her, in the late 80s, early 90s, there's some extra ties in the musical industry. She did work in commercials, I guess. I'm sure it is on YouTube, but she did a Big Mac commercial or some kind of sandwich commercial for one of the fast food joints, and was one of those typical singers that, sing about their all for a Big Mac.
Uh-huh.
So
I love a Big Mac.
Yeah, I mean, as far as her music, I wouldn't disagree. Like, a favorite analogy I like to use when it comes to any artist really is to think of an artist like you would a cook. And to me, I think that gives people a better understanding of what art really is, because you can have your gourmet cooks who have the finest ingredients and cook the finest dishes in the world, and you can have people that can make you a good fried egg or a hamburger or something like that. And if I have to compare Sheryl Crow to anything, she's the Applebee's of music. Applebee's is not necessarily a bad thing, but do I want to eat there every day? No.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good analogy to Applebee's. It's just very milquetoast, very broad, acceptable to most of the population.
It's music by percentage, if that makes sense, because to me, a lot of her work does seem like she has a team of scientists, like studying recent hits and doing something like, if you put this word in verse 3 or before the chorus, you will get an extra, 500,000 people listening to it. Ooh. just it's something built in a studio.
Yeah.
Just a format. And it's not like I can't imagine Sheryl Crow spending too much time focusing on the songwriting aspect. Now, as far as like playing the music with instruments, that's a different thing altogether. I'm talking about just purely songwriting, and again, formula. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah.
The next name, I know you were excited when it was nominated here, Missy Elliot.
That's right. I was very excited when Missy Elliot was nominated, and I'm very happy to see that she was inducted or is going to be inducted. And, she has got a real, she was a visionary, I think, of female strong rap stars. And I think she paved the way for a lot of people. And so I think, and she's still, on top of her game. Her career is still fabulous.
Yeah, and, I've made it no secret that I've not listened to her music before, and I don't think it would be something that I would, enjoy myself. Doesn't make it bad. I think her induction, it again shows another weakness in the Rock Hall. Because it's like, it's not that she's not deserving, but this is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I can understand, and I can not forgive or just accept, someone that's on the fringe, or an older artist that, was around before they put certain types of labels on music, having that connection with her. I don't really see it there. I mean, it's not like, she, like with Ice Cube actually did an album with Korn, back in the day. So, there's a tie there. Ice-T with his, metal band Body Count. So there is definitely, intertwining of hip hop and rock. I just haven't seen it with her. Now, am I going to be picketing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they inducted her? Of course not. I mean, at the end of the day, this is about rich people doing rich things. And I think part of my bias too is the fact that she got first started hitting it big once I was in my 20s. So she still seems like a newer artist. When I think of a classic artist who deserves induction, I thought about the guys that were already in their 40s and 50s when, I was just discovering music, so I think that's part of it too on my end. But, good for her. Good for her. Like, do I agree with it? Like, if I had the vote, would I have voted for her? Is a better way to phrase it. No, but she's had one hell of a career. I think, I think you would.
So
agree
you'd
with
be willing to say no to her, having never listened to her music?
Yep. Because it's not like I wouldn't do research on her. It's not, I mean, if I actually had a vote, I would take time to listen, but I would also do a little research to see if there was a connection. Like one of the people that didn't get nominated, which really shocked me, the White Stripes. And you have someone like Jack White, who ended up producing and working on an album with Loretta Lynn, did a song for the movie Quantum of Solace with Alicia Keys. I mean, that's someone I want to see inducted, even if they are not necessarily a rock act. Someone who does have that interweaving with, rock in some way. And again, and I even put this out there to the audience. If there is a connection I am not aware of, by all means, let me know. And then I will gladly, change my opinion from there. But, would I have voted for her? No, but I'm not against her being in. But do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
George Michael.
What can you say about George Michael except that he is amazing, was amazing, and, it's so sad that he's no longer with us.
At quite a young age.
At quite a young age, and it was interesting to fall in love with him as a preteen teenager and fall more and more in love with him and basically never stopping loving him. Like, he never did anything that made me upset with him. Like, the things he got in trouble for are things that I would get in trouble for. Mm-hmm. He was doing drugs. He was having sex. He was doing things that are fun, and he kept getting caught doing them. But, I think he had a sense of humor about it all. You know, he wasn't pathetic about it. And
I know in the late 90s, after he got busted in a Beverly Hills bathroom for soliciting a cop for sex, he ended up making a video with like a bunch of, guy dancers dressed as cops that, started dancing and all that stuff. So he definitely had a sense of humor and was able to, he understood that the general public can understand doing something silly,
Yeah. So, love him. I feel like his music is worthy. I feel like he was a good songwriter.
Yeah, I mean, is George Michael someone I would call a rock artist? No, but I think he is someone that, take the duet with Elton John, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. He's had direct interactions with rock artists. If you, the Faith album, Faith itself, great rockabilly tune, and it has other songs on there like Father Figure that are intense as hell, that, you put some guitars on there and not keyboards, it's going to sound different but have the same inflection there.
And that anthem from that album, Freedom 90, which was, of course, the anthem, and, you still hear that played today because it was such a, very triumphant song.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, because on Tim's Tremendous Tapes, I did listen to one of his greatest hits albums. When I talked about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he, for the most part, admittedly was making music for people whose taste I don't necessarily like, so I wasn't his target audience. But, like I said before, I mean, if there was ever a consummate singer out there who was able to weave seamlessly in and out of different musical genres and be emotional with it, you can't get better than George Michael.
I want to tell this little story.
Ooh. Story time with the professor.
Story time with the professor. So it's not even my story. It's from a documentary. But there's this documentary about the Smiths. And it's very detailed because the Smiths were only around. They put out 4 albums and broke up. Mm-hmm. So there's a limited amount of time. And so they covered basically every detail about this band and everything they did. And one of the things about the Smiths, of course, was Morrissey, who was outspoken, who was really confident, who saw himself as above everybody else, kind of a right wanker, if you ask me. And he was on a TV interview show with George Michael, and he was so disdainful of George Michael, who at that time was, the singer in Wham, and wasn't who he was later in his career. Mm-hmm. But the way Morrissey talked about his taste in music and his musical ability, I thought was really awful, because I thought he was, he turned out to be so much more talented than Morrissey. Like, if you put their work together over time, George Michael was really an artist, I think, who worked his trade and improved over time.
There is, and I'm sure you can get this with anything, but there are also gatekeepers. There are also people who think they're doing serious work while other people are off making garbage. Like, as a writer myself, with the types of stories I write, if, the times I've gone to, like, writers groups have been iffy, because sometimes you will get people that are there in the spirit of helping authors get better, which should ideally be what a writer's group is for. And then you have people that will sit there, and because you're writing a story based on a genre they think is garbage, they will look down on you and not tell you what is wrong with your story, but do everything but, it doesn't make me feel. What the fuck do you mean?
You want to feel the explosion. You want to feel the hot air whooshing past you.
But that is more description than usually you would get. You would have somebody just give some sort of vague term that means nothing, that makes them feel good for insulting you, basically. And
It's the backhanded compliment.
yeah, the bless your heart.
You really displayed the ability to formulate paragraphs. Like, would be something that's positive, but like, yeah, I can write a paragraph.
Anyway, let's go on to the next name here. I think we can both agree this is a good choice. Mr. Willie Nelson.
Of course, this is a good choice. I mean, he is the godfather of music in this country right now, I think. And if he and Dolly Parton got together on a ticket, I think they'd be president and vice president. No question.
Definitely agreed. And again, another artist who, primarily country, but has weaved enough in and out of rock music that his induction definitely deserves it. And, that's what I am personally missing from Missy Elliot. But that's because I don't have all the knowledge. I'm not entirely knowledgeable on her career. She may have had some interaction that I'm not aware of, but Willie, for his work in the 70s alone, I mean, like, you take out the fiddle, put on more of a guitar. I mean, are his songs any different than what the Eagles were doing?
When you were saying he's a country artist, made me immediately think of Whiskey River, which I think is a rock and roll song, no question. You know the song I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Whiskey River, take my mind.
Yeah, if you just change the instrumentation, that's like totally a rock song.
Yep.
The other thing about Willie is that he's so generous with other artists. So I think he, influenced other artists not only through his music, but also through his relationships with younger artists.
And he's one of those people that, whether you just like rock, you just like country, you just like soul, you just like hip hop, or you're rich, you're poor, you wear a business suit, you wear, corduroys and a flannel shirt or something like that, you're all still congregating together to celebrate his music. He's one of those people that realizes what music can do, and that's, kind of take the sheen off of people's eyes to realize that, hey, we're all kind of in this experience together. Just because one person may be making 6, 7, 8 figures a year and the other person's struggling to get by doesn't mean they can't, be friends or anything like that. Doesn't mean that they don't have some connection somewhere, even if it's just fucking music. I mean, being able to have a situation like his 4th of July picnics in Texas, at least in the past, I don't know if they're current, but, he would routinely have, like accountants dancing with, bikers dancing with, people in cowboy hats, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think country from the 70s, this kind of country, this sort of outlaw country, highwaymen, kind of countrymen, not countrymen, outlaws, highwaymen, etc. It was just very popular in the 70s. It was very mainstream.
Yeah, and even into the 80s. I mean, Hank Williams Jr., anybody?
Right.
Because, his popularity didn't start waning off in the mainstream until at least 85, I would think. I mean, once MTV started really becoming big after the first initial wave. But, anyway, should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, let's go on to the next one.
Rage Against the Machine finally got in.
Oh, finally they got in. Finally. Absolutely agree with the choice. Obviously, rock and roll. I don't think that you can make any argument that is not rock and roll.
But it does have flavors of hip-hop. I mean, it definitely is influenced by hip-hop, and I think they call it nu metal, but, Rage Against the Machine was kind of the first big band to take that metal and hip-hop influence and kind of bring it together. Now, granted, Rage Against the Machine made their songs about, politics, the events that are happening in the world today, and then people like Limp Bizkit did it all for the nookie.
Yeah, totally. And I think, it's kind of, I think it's kind of ironic. Rage Against the Machine, like, okay, what are you going to, what is the form of your rage? Yeah. It's like, you play rock and roll at festivals and stuff. Like, what are you doing? Like, you never hear about the Rage Against the Machine, charity or...
Well, I mean, they at their concerts they have groups, political groups there. They hand off flyers on their website. They have
good.
information. I know in 2016, Tom Morello, the guitar player, was in Portland, Oregon. It's like a block up from Pioneer Square. There's like this little open area that has like a fountain.
Director's Park.
Probably. And they had a small stage set up, and it was him and an acoustic guitar and a couple of other people. Just playing, but it was in support to try to get people to get out and vote. He took political science at Harvard. And yeah, I mean, like the lead singer, Zach De La Rocha, has history with, progressive movements as well. So yeah, they're not doing this for the drugs or the nookie folks. I mean, they have a very, because like on this show, I know I've been very open, and I stand by this, that I think people should go out of their way to create conversations with people of differing opinion who are principled, who aren't just going to lie or go into their confirmation bias or whatever. But that does not mean I am conservative myself. I am very much a progressive. I know, and the causes that they generally support are ones I would get behind myself. So.
Yeah, I guess I was totally wrong about them.
But doesn't mean you have to like their music.
I like their music. I like their music fine. I really like some of their music. If I could remember any song names, I would tell
Bulls
you.
on Parade.
Of course.
Yeah. Killing in the Name.
Killing in the Name of, yes.
Sleep Now in the Fire, Guerrilla Radio.
I don't know about those, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I like their music, so I'm glad they're getting in there.
All right. The last group in the performer category, from West Michigan, the Spinners.
Now, the Spinners...
kind of R&B and soul.
Right. From the 60s.
60s and 70s.
60s and 70s, yeah. I am sure they were quite influential.
I can tell that you can't recall one of their songs, but I know for a fact you've heard them. I mean, if you've listened to Tim's Tremendous Tapes, I played one of their songs on there, the I'll Be Around.
I'll be around.
Yeah. So you've heard them, and I am not going to proclaim to be the biggest fan of the Spinners here, folks, but these, again, are one of the people that, because of the age of the group, I would say would be ones that I would say deserve the induction because of their influence on musical history as it's passed down. Mm-hmm. That's why, some of the other names that didn't get nominated this year, like Soundgarden, for instance, like, why didn't they get in? The White Stripes and Warren Zevon.
Yeah, why didn't Warren Zevon get in?
I mean, this was not the first time he was even nominated. And, like, with his contemporaries, like the guy who produced one of his albums, Jackson Browne, I believe, is already in there. You have other contemporaries of his era that are already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's just like, and they already have someone with the name of David Letterman, who's already offered to be the celebrity that would induct him, because David Letterman was a huge fan of his and was actually on, before Warren Zevon died, he produced an album, and Dave had one entire episode that was just Warren Zevon singing.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and talking,
Yeah.
So it's like you have a moment there that could be very special and could be very positive for, Warren's surviving family members, but, other people needed to get in. Iron Maiden did not get in. I mean, they're not crying any tears. Iron Maiden has already openly said, if nominated, they will not run. They will not, they don't need the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They don't want the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But some of the choices are quizzical. Let's put it that way. Because again, like, would the Country Hall of Fame start inducting rock artists? You're generally not going to have that with the Hip Hop Hall of Fame start inducting country artists.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you do have some hip-hop country crossover now.
I mean, could it happen? Sure. And again, if the idea is to nominate people for induction that do have some, some connection, even if it's tenuous or just one moment, I got no problem with that. But, you have to have an argument for why. But that was under the performer category. We'll go a little bit faster through these others because we have the musical influence, musical excellence, and the Ahmet Ertegun Award. For the musical influence, we have DJ Kool Herc and Linktree.
So excited to see DJ Kool Herc. I mean, he goes way back to like the first hip hop parties. And so, yeah, it's amazing.
Heard him mentioned by the Beastie Boys. I know Linktree is kind of like one of those surf guitar players or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. I could be totally wrong and talking out of my ass, but hey, we've had more evidence of that on this show than anything else. Musical Excellence Award, which is what they used to get Judas Priest in last year. So basically, these are people that they're kind of tired of nominating because they know they won't get it, but feel they deserve some sort of introduction. We have Chaka Khan, Al Kooper, and Bernie Taupin.
I love Chaka Khan, I love Bernie Taupin, and I don't know Al Kooper.
I'm familiar with the name, not familiar with his music with Al Kooper. Chaka Khan, of course, great voice. I mean, she was in the Blues Brothers.
I mean, she had a great album just come out a couple years ago that I love.
I mean, very active, and yeah, I mean, if she's still putting out albums today, that means people are still buying them. Maybe not in the numbers they were in the 70s, but they're still there, and, she definitely deserves recognition, but we'll go to the last one here, the Ahmet Ertegun Award, Don Cornelius. Does that name ring a bell?
Of course it does. Don Cornelius.
The host of Soul Train. I messed that up, but I don't have the voice that Don Cornelius had, because
And who was Ahmet Ertegun?
He was a music producer, and I believe he ran Atlantic Records in the Ray Charles movie. He's one of the characters in there because he's the guy who produced Ray Charles's first records. Ah,
I see.
Yeah, but with Soul Train though, Soul Train did have some rock artists on on some occasions. Queen, another one bites the dust. That was popular in the R&B community, and they were on Soul Train, and they took that as a big-time honor to be on there. So
that's awesome.
So, again, folks, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has inducted another class this year. There are many glaring omissions, but for the most part, solid list. I think the big headliner for me would be Rage Against the Machine, but that's just based on my taste. I think others would probably say Willie Nelson or even George Michael or something like that. But, I would say overall, not the strongest class in the world.
I agree with that. It's somewhat underwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, DJ Kool Herc being there, to me, really shows that they care about the evolution of music as well. And I think that they have to be nimble and adjust to the reality of the music scene. And I think there's not so much, I think there's sort of, it's just not so much about genre anymore.
I mean, because what is genre but a way for businessmen to make money? I mean, that's all it is, because music is music.
I think it was a way of people being like, I like rock and roll. And the record salesman would be like, oh, well, you know who's really great rock and roll? This person. Well, we don't do that anymore. We don't go to the record store and talk to the record store owner about records.
And we look for music much differently because we have these streaming services.
We experience music much differently. And so we may be listening to our station or our feed or whatever. And we get to be more choosy But at the same time, it's possible to be exposed to whatever you want to be exposed to.
And I was thinking about this the other day, though. Like, I thought back to the glory days of MTV, and that was probably the last time to where I consistently had, we're talking late 80s MTV here, different types of genres of music that would consistently play, you had your rock, you had your hair metal stuff, but you also had your R&B, you had your pop music. On Saturday nights, you had your Headbangers Ball. And stuff like that. But, for popular music out there, you did have, try this, try this, try this. And I'm sure you had that on the radio back in the day as well, when it was more programmed by the DJ that's talking into the microphone and not by a computer program, thousands of miles away. You had somebody that would be able to say, hey, this band is, I heard this band's demo tape and just had to play it for you guys. Here it is. We don't have that. We don't have... Frank Zappa even mentioned this. He said when he was alive, of course, he mentioned that he liked music executives back in the 60s because they were old guys chewing cigars that didn't understand the music. But was a good thing because they decided they would give something a chance. Something as crazy and wacky as Frank Zappa. They didn't get it, but they thought, we'll see if we can make some money with it and go from there. But now you have everything so programmed. People think that they're geniuses just because they can, enter numbers into a spreadsheet or something like that. And, I predict within 3% of, reliability that that's not how creative stuff works.
What's interesting, having grown up in the South, in the time that I grew up there, which was in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have cable TV. The world was much smaller, and we had a lot of country radio stations, one rock and roll station, and not even a pop station, let alone a hip hop station. Just like all the churches were Baptist, they get the flavor down there and they just want to stick with it.
Yeah, both kinds of music, country and western.
Exactly. So, I think while it does have downsides, this ability to tap into all of the art all over the world anytime you want, as long as you have an internet connection, has got to have improved the lives of people that lived in locations that did not offer the type of cultural experiences that they would resonate with.
I'm not denying that. It's just, it can be easier to be able to connect with a piece of music if you do have somebody, whether it is a friend, whether you have a DJ on the radio, a VJ on TV, or, a computer program now tell you why that is good. That you don't have, with something like Apple Music, you can go to virtually any album you can think of, but, if you don't know about the group, you don't know where to start, you could hit on something that, maybe doesn't work for you. I wouldn't want, someone to fall in love with the Rolling Stones and give them their first album or give them Dirty Work, which doesn't sound anything like what people think of when they hear the Rolling Stones. You want to be able to say, to somebody that just wants to discover the Stones, hey, check out this album,
Check out Sticky Fingers.
Or, get this Greatest Hits album or something like that. You want to be able to have that, and I think that is what is missing for the most part with these services. Yes, I think one thing Apple Music does right is the radio stations, which, let's face it, Pandora had that idea first, but it's not a bad idea. Take some core music that you do like, and then because you like band X, band Y sounds pretty similar, so give them a try.
Yeah, and that is really, how algorithms work the best is finding things that look the same. That's how artificial intelligence sort of starts, is I can teach you what this song sounds like. You can analyze it, just in terms of the key that it's in, whether it's got female voices, whether it's got male voices, just everything about it. And then find music that is similar electronically, digitally. And, it takes a second or less than a nanosecond, right, to do. And so this is the beginning of the robots taking over the world.
On that note, let's talk about books.
Yes, let's get to our main topic, since we had so much fun talking about all those things we just talked about.
Indeed. There's another one for you, folks. The Nerdy Five is a great segment because, in some ways, and we should definitely utilize this more, it allows us to be able to talk about the show topics more throughout the week. And, we did it last week, had a good time talking about that. So I thought for this week, we'll do a Nerdy Five of our top 5 books that were made into a movie where the movie is just as good or better than the book. How was it coming up with your list?
Well, it was pretty easy, I'll tell you, Tim, because I went to a lot of websites that told you the books that were turned into movies.
Oh, I didn't. I'm kidding.
And I didn't know, I hadn't read most of the books. So you'll notice my list is somewhat eclectic. And focused on the kind of literature and stuff that I like to read, so...
Yeah, I mean, I've some of these choices I believe I'm sure I've talked about on the show before, but my list, I think I wanted to show that even something as silly as an action movie can come from a book. It seems like that there are some ideas that can only exist in films, and it's simply not true. So just wanted to be able to have that and not do the typical Oliver Twist type of deal. To try to make myself seem smarter than I am. Mm-hmm. But since I opened things up this week, how about I pressure you to do your first choice here? What's your first choice?
Okay, I will do my first choice. My first 2 choices are by the same author. So my number 1 choice is Sense and Sensibility, which is a novel written by the supreme novelist of the English-speaking world, one Miss Jane Austen.
Nice. Which version of the movie?
Excellent question. I'm going with, because the BBC version was a mini-series and not a movie, I am going with the 2013-ish version that featured, I can't remember her name, Keira
Knightley?
Keira Knightley,
Yeah.
as Miss Elizabeth Bennet, and this really hot dude who I have no idea who he is, and I've never seen him since, and I've never seen him before, but he was super hot, and he played Mr. Darcy. And it was just so real and so sensory in ways that none of the previous versions had been, where you could think that was actually maybe what life was like. Real life of real people. So I thought the movie did a wonderful job of bringing to life the characters and scenes and locations of the book. And it was just it engaged more of my senses than just the book. So I really enjoyed it, I think, more than reading the book. Although I would never change that I had read the book.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I've not seen the movie. I've not read the book, so I can't really comment. Jane Austen is one of those authors that, even if you never read a word of her work, she's influenced something you've liked. And, that much I can guarantee. And the fact that, we're still talking about the work of a woman from the 1800s, that shows you how much it speaks to the everyday life of being human.
Exactly. Like, whatever the context, whatever the morality, whatever the social construct, we're human. No matter this, I love that. No matter the social construct, we're human. And, I went to her house where she lived until she died in England. And it was way out of the way. I had to take a train to a bus to a taxi to get there. And the taxi guy got totally confused and went to the wrong place.
Oi!
Because it was like such a little, it was like a pilgrimage-y kind of spot. It was like nobody in this town except people who were going to Jane Austen's house. Mm-hmm. And that was the only thing around there of interest. So, she's amazing. She's amazing.
Well, all right. How about I go on with my first choice?
You go on with your first.
All right. I've talked about this before. It is a book by an author by the name of Roderick Thorpe. It's called Nothing Lasts Forever. It is the sequel to a book called The Detective. The Detective itself was made into a movie in the late 60s starring Frank Sinatra.
Ooh.
And this particular story, Nothing Lasts Forever, is, the main character of both The Detective and Nothing Lasts Forever is going to see his daughter in Los Angeles at a party at a place where she works, and when he arrives there, terrorists show up and start trying to kill everybody, and it's his job to save the day. This is the book that became Die Hard.
Oh my gosh. Which is your favorite movie?
For action movies, yeah. I mean, if you're not including Die Hard on your list of top 5 favorite action movies ever, you're not trying hard. No pun intended.
And you're about to die hard because Tim's going to kill you.
But what I loved about this were a couple things. One, it made me appreciate the film even more after I read it because as far as the movie goes, it got it mostly right in terms of how it was presented in the book. I mean, it's probably 70 to 80% the same as it happened in the book, but the changes that they made, I do think made it better. I think, John McTiernan, the director, when he first read the book, he didn't like the fact that the terrorists in the book were just terrorists. He thought that wouldn't really play, that it would be more downbeat for an action film than really deserved. So he's the one who turned the terrorists into thieves and made it, a burglary story at that particular point. And, I think that definitely made it better. Now, interesting enough, because the book that Die Hard came from was a sequel of the book and the movie The Detective, contractually, Frank Sinatra had to be contacted first to play the role of John McClane. Thankfully, he declined, but, just imagine, Frank Sinatra in Die Hard.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been so funny. Like, what would they have done? I mean, they probably just wouldn't have made it if he said, I want to be in it.
He was in his... He had to have been in his late 70s at that particular point, or mid to late 70s. Harrison Ford has done a new Indiana Jones movie, so it could be done. It just tone-wise would be much different because, being a sequel, it would have to be somewhat similar in tone to the first one. But the first one was more just... in the characters in the book was not named John McClane, it was a different name. But the first one was just more of a local story set in New York. The LA thing was part of the sequel. So, going to, having the new, I guess a fish out of water story is always going to work in some way, shape, or form. But I just don't see how it would have worked with Sinatra's sensibilities. Sinatra was not the flashy, he was a great actor, and we will be talking about him again on my list here. But, he... was an actor from a different era of films when, actors were expected to do different things than they are now.
Gotcha.
All right. What's your next one?
Okay, so my number two is going to be Pride and Prejudice. Okay, so sounds a lot like Sense and Sensibility, and in fact was written by the same author, but is a totally different story with totally different characters. And I actually was talking about Pride and Prejudice when you asked me what was my favorite version of Sense and Sensibility.
Okay.
So now I'm going to tell you my favorite version of Sense and Sensibility, since you already know my favorite version of Pride and Prejudice, and that is the version with Hugh Grant and Alan Rickman and a whole bunch of other people that were all awesome. And that came out in maybe 2000.
You sold me on Alan Rickman.
I know, right? He's so good. And this was one of, it was a fairly early popular movie that he was in.
Well, Die Hard was his first movie, and he was 47 when he did Die Hard.
Nice.
So, he'd been in the business for about a decade at that point, yeah.
Right. So
as far as Hollywood goes, he'd been a theater actor, but anyway.
What's your number two?
All right, my number two, staying in the British realm here. This book here has a long history to be ended up being brought on screen in Faithful, adaptation. There was a version of this movie released in the 60s that had David Niven and Woody Allen and a whole bunch of other people in it playing the same character with Orson Welles as the bad guy, which didn't do well at the box office, but, has a cult following. But in this particular version, in the early 2000s, in the mid-2000s actually, Pierce Brosnan was actually told that he was no longer going to be required for his services as one James Bond. And the producers decided to hire Mr. Daniel Craig, and that made people upset. Because how can Daniel Craig, a blonde guy, be Bond? Bond has black hair, but...
Have they heard of hair dye?
Well, they didn't go with it, and I'm glad they didn't, and I agreed with their choice with
It's
Daniel
not like
Craig.
we're fooled and think it's the same person. It's played by different people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're so worried about hair color that you're missing other parts of the character, you're not paying attention, as far as I'm concerned. But we're talking about Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. And I think the book is a great book. The books are different than the movies. Some of them are garbage, but they definitely have a much darker tone than the movies came out with. But what I loved about Daniel Craig's Casino Royale was the very last scene, because Casino Royale, the movie, was an origin story of James Bond. And, at the end of the movie, you have Mr. White, the big bad guy, getting out of his car. His phone rings, and he answers, "Hello." And then you hear a voice on the other line, "Mr. White?" "Yes." All of a sudden, Mr. White gets shot in the leg, and he's, "Oh my God," and starts crawling. And then you hear some music start to play, some strings. You see feet walking, and then it's Daniel Craig, and he looks at Mr. White and goes, "The name's Bond. James Bond." Then the music hits, and I saw that on DVD for the first time, and I cheered, and I swear I rewound it back like 50 times. And why this particular scene? This scene for me was important and better than the book because it did give Bond a little more heart. Because at the end of the book and, at the end of a certain point in the film, and did you see Casino Royale?
I believe I watched it with you.
Maybe, yeah. But there's a point where a woman he fell in love with ended up turning on him, and he doesn't know the reasons why. And so he was angry with her. And, the book just kind of left it at that and just let him, hate. And then in the other versions, in the other books that came out in the Bond series, Bond views women as, things. Let's be honest here. But, this movie was able to make Bond more human. He was still very much the Bond we all grew up and loved, although in very early stages. But I think it brought more heart to Bond than, what Ian Fleming gave the character. And, that's why I had to add it.
Yeah, totally. I think I watched it, and I think I really enjoyed it.
You can't really go wrong with a Bond film. I mean, even because for escapist fun, if that, you get 2 hours of just silliness and funniness, and, you're all over the world. You see beautiful people, men and women alike, and it's great.
Yeah,
Right,
I agree.
What's your next one?
So my next one is going to be Jarhead. So Jarhead was actually a book that was written by a guy that I used to ride the shuttle bus with.
Ooh.
He was a visiting professor at Lewis and Clark College when I was a law student at Lewis and Clark Law School. And there was a shuttle that went from downtown to the school and back. And I used to take it all the time because I lived downtown, or pretty close to downtown. So I would take my bike downtown and then ride the shuttle up. And he used to ride the shuttle, and we used to chat all the time. And he told me he was a writer, and then he was working on a book and about his experiences in the Marines. And he told me all about the book. And then eventually he gave a title to it, and he told me what the title was, and it was Jarhead. And so I kept that in mind, and I bought that book as soon as I was aware that it existed. Because I had this personal connection to the author, which I'd never had before. And it was a great book. I was really surprised. You never imagine that somebody you've met on the bus would write a really great book, but he did. And then about 5 years later, I hear this being made into a movie. And I was like, shit, he has really hit the big time. That is so awesome for him. And I I saw the movie, and even though I loved the book was much more internal, and the movie was much more external. Just meaning that, like, you could get inside the heads of the characters much easier reading the book. And in that way, it kind of reminds me of Apocalypse Now. In that, in the movie, you really have to pay attention and infer from people's actions what a lot of the story is. And that was true in Jarhead too, I believe, that we got to know the characters by what they did, because there was not much narration.
Yeah, and I mean, in movies, you want to show, not tell anyway. I mean, it's a different form of storytelling. I agree, internal monologues are important, but you know, if you actually put most internal monologues on screen, it's really just someone sitting there thinking. And that's not really entertaining, unfortunately. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I don't think on-screen narration is in and of itself a bad thing, but you can do different things with it. I mean, you know, based on how, you know, the time period you're telling the story, for instance, it could be like journal entries or video
letters
entries.
To each other, or
something like that, yeah. But, you know,
or you've got emails.
Ooh, yeah. And Meg Ryan did make a sighting recently. Imagine that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But anyway.
Not by you.
No. No. She's married to John Cougar Mellencamp.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah, I you know, apparently he's still touring, but he looks like he's like touring in between his shift at a factory.
Yeah, he's been rode hard, put away wet one too many times, I'd say.
Yeah, I remember when I worked at a music store in Michigan in my 20s, and we had a Ticketmaster kiosk there, and occasionally we would hear of, you know, like big time artists that were coming to town. And one time we found out that John Mellencamp was going to play a secret show at a local club, and you know, they only listed the artist publicly on the Ticketmaster website as like Little Bastard or something like that. His choice, but you know, we ended up getting some knowledge on that. But shall I go on with my number 3?
Yes, number 3, please.
All right. We've actually talked about this movie on the show, the awful remake with Gus Van Sant, Psycho, written by Robert Bloch. Based on a notorious killer, Ed Gein. Are you familiar with that name?
No.
Well, Ed Gein, okay, knowing, I won't go into it too far, because knowing your tolerance level for horror, let's just say that movies that Ed Gein's acts have inspired have been like Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, stuff like that. You know, so yeah, he
was a real baddie.
Yeah, not a good guy. But Psycho, so much different than the movie. And what I think the movie got better is they made Norman Bates look like a nice kid. You know, what do I mean by that? In the book, Norman Bates is more disheveled, a little, I guess, overweight or something like that, and just you have the immediate impression that, yeah, there's something wrong with this guy. Whereas...
Or that he's super beta, at least.
Something.
He was beta before there was beta.
But in the movie with the Hitchcock one, not the Gus Van Sant one,
Hitchcock,
with Anthony Perkins, how he played the character when he was Norman, he was just, you know, like the kid next door, you know, in his 20s or something like that, but just a local small town kid that, you know, would always help out with, you know, milking the neighbor's goats or something. Or
that like enthusiasm, you know, of a small town kid.
Yeah, and then when you find out the whole story that, you know, Norman killed his mother, and because of his grief ended up having a split personality and thinks he's his mother at times. You know, how Anthony Perkins played that was so crucial. You know, because like I think I pointed it out in a review of the Gus Van Sant remake. You know, that there's a scene at the end where not Arbogast, but like the boyfriend of Marion Crane, the woman who was murdered at the beginning of the film, is arguing with Norman Bates. In the Hitchcock version, Norman Bates is arguing like in order to protect his mother. He's not trying to hide something, whereas Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates was acting like I have something to hide, so why are you talking to me? Like little things like that, which annoyed the fuck out of me, because it's like you're not getting what, was perfect. But that's what I liked about it, because Hitchcock, with the self-imposed limitations he put on himself, filming a black and white movie in 1960 with a television crew to make a movie that's, meant for theaters and still have it be as impactful as it is today. The man was a genius. He may not have been the nicest person in the world. We find out more and more that the big names in history are all assholes in some way, shape, or form. But, as far as entertainment goes, Psycho, wow, one hell of a story. And I think in a lot of ways is better than the book.
Cool.
All right, what's your next choice?
My next choice is The Other Boleyn Girl.
I see a theme here.
So this is, historical fiction about Anne Boleyn's sister who gets it on with the king, but doesn't end up getting her head cut off, unlike most of his wives. So this is I feel like it's a book by Philippa Gregory. It's a genre book for sure, like a historical fiction sexy novel with the heaving breasts and the corsets and all of that. Any book like that is going to be more enjoyable when you can actually see the costumes and the makeup and the locations, instead of imagining them. Like, it just is a richer world, I think, when you can see it. And again, you see it through, like, having read the books, then you can see, I see what the director is doing here. Because it's not 100% true to the book, but the emotion is the same, for example. Because, as you said, things are different in film and on paper. Mm-hmm. How about you?
I've not seen the movie. I've not read the book. I'm definitely familiar with Philippa Gregory. She has quite a long list of writing accomplishments and everything, but never really worked for me.
Yeah, no, I couldn't imagine that you would like it.
Yeah, shock, folks.
Shocker.
Yeah, she has nothing on the time the $1 Million Man tried to buy a slave.
Or the time Andre the Giant kicked
that bastard. All right, shall I go on with my next choice?
Yes, please.
It's another movie that we reviewed that we actually saw at the Hollywood Theater.
Hey.
Based on the book The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. The Wizard of Oz, released in the 30s, is one of those films that is just pitch perfect in every way. I mean, from first frame to last. I think the reason, on the one hand, it really has shocked me that they're thinking of rebooting The Lord of the Rings now. Think of the times they tried to adapt the Chronicles of Narnia books. The Oz books have been virtually untouched, since at least 86, 87 with Return to Oz from Disney, and that was not a hit in theaters. No. The last big attempt at...
the one I remember the most is The Wiz. Did you ever see The Wiz?
No.
It was the soul version.
I'm familiar with it.
It was amazing. It had Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson and all the Jacksons and everybody else was in it, and it was so good. You really should see it. We should watch it.
Maybe if we lose another trivia match, I don't know.
No, it's so good, man. It's so good.
Because I think, I love the books. They're based on a series of books, and I think I stand by this assertion, and unless proven wrong, I think if you ask the average person on the street, they would be, if you ask them about The Wizard of Oz, they would just probably think of the Judy Garland movie and not think, hey, this is actually based on a series of books, and they're all in the public domain now. So it has really, really shocked me that, I know a few years back, Sam Raimi did have the Oz, the Great and Powerful prequel movie that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I know there's a movie version of the Broadway show Wicked, which is on its way. I'm just surprised nobody has attempted to do The Wonderful Wizard of Oz as a live action movie. I think with today's technology, I think it could be great. Having said that, let's go back to the original. The original looks like it was filmed in the 30s, but as far as the passion, that passion is what's keeping it as popular today as it ever was. I mean, from all the actors. I mean, Margaret Hamilton was the first Bond villain before there were Bond villains. The Wicked Witch of the West, I'll get you, my prince. I mean, she had so much fun with that role. It's just unfortunate she was so good. She continued to scare people. Actually, they had a long-standing episode of Sesame Street that she was on as the Wicked Witch that they would never show. But recently somebody found the footage and uploaded it to YouTube. So
good.
There is that. But, I mean, so much has been said about the Wizard of Oz movie. And again, we've talked about our experience watching it at the Hollywood Theater, but watch the movie, read the books if you have a chance. There's all I don't know if it's available on streaming, but I know John Ritter played Al Frank Baum in a TV movie on his life, and
I did watch that.
Yeah, and say what you will about a TV movie, but John Ritter was one hell of an actor. So definitely read those books. There's a lot more to the Wizard of Oz than just the Ruby Slippers, and the Ruby Slippers weren't even in the book.
Whoa,
that is owned by MGM.
Oh wow.
But all right, what is your last choice? So
my last movie is Forrest Gump. So. Again, maybe it's just me. Like, I just process information better visually, I think, of this sort. And Forrest Gump is a complicated book. It's a long book. There are lots of different characters. It's a whole lot easier to remember who the heck they are when you can actually see them. So it was really helpful to see the movie. What do you think of Forrest Gump?
Read the book and saw the movie. Both are classics in my opinion. I get your point about the book though, because for me, a book, even though you can close your eyes and imagine, it's not going to take the place of being drenched in, surround sound and having a huge screen in front of you. That's a different type of feeling than what you can get in the book. And talking about, meeting up with famous political figures in the book, great read, but the scope you don't get until you see the movie. So it's a different beast, and I'm glad, they didn't go through with a sequel, because there is a sequel to Forrest Gump. Mm-hmm. But in the books, Gump and Company, I believe it's called. It's directed by Robert Zemeckis, who did the Back to the Future films. This was one of the first big non-sci-fi movies that showed, modern audiences at the time in the 90s what CGI could do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just because of, it's commonplace now. There are apps on your phone to where you can do some of the stuff they did in the Forrest Gump movie in terms of trading your face out in an old video or something like that. But back in the day, having Forrest Gump interact with Nixon or Kennedy or something like that was a big deal.
It was a big deal. It was very innovative.
And the soundtrack. That's another one of those great soundtracks, like your American Graffiti, like the Dead President soundtrack, that is just able to take a time in life and kind of put it on record.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Shall I go on with my last one?
Yeah, so let's hear your last one.
All right. One of my favorite actors is Frank Sinatra. Not my absolute favorite, but we're talking like top 10. Just from what I've seen him in, he can play a really good. He is probably short guy syndrome more than anything, but he can play a tough guy. Had to pretend to be a tough guy, but I chose the Manchurian Candidate.
Hey,
this was came out in '62, but ultimately ended up being shelved for many years. Because of the story kind of linking a little too well with the JFK assassination. It came out right around the same time. Mm-hmm. The story is about these soldiers in war, and one of them is brainwashed into, following orders at a particular command. And the enemy who does that is a communist enemy, folks. And then they go back to America. The soldiers ended up, including Frank Sinatra, meets up with the guy who was brainwashed, played by Lawrence Harvey. And, they think they're good friends, but the more they think about it, they really weren't. And you end up finding out that, the soldier who was brainwashed, his mother is married to a senator who wants to become president, but she's also involved with the people who help brainwash her kid, even though she's part of a political family that wants to fight against communists and stuff like that. And they and end up trying to get the brainwash guy to do something, but the Frank Sinatra character ends up intervening, and it ends up with like a murder-suicide thing at the end. It's an intense movie for 1962. Angela Lansbury plays the mother of the brainwashed guy, and doing some not so motherly things in the movie. That was further explored on the book. But one hell of a tense thriller. Just one hell of a great book. And I can understand, out of just the right thing to do. I mean, in terms of taking it off the shelves so soon after the Kennedy assassination and just giving it time to, separate. But it was one hell of a great story that it to me was just as good as the book. The book was one hell of a good read. They did remake it in the 90s or early 2000s with Denzel Washington, which was not as effective.
Yeah.
And I think that too is just the usual stuff that happens in remakes. People thinking, hey, here's a remake we can do, and just doing it without putting any real thought into it. But if you have not done so, Richard Condon is the writer, The Manchurian Candidate is the book, and the movie. You will not be disappointed.
Absolutely.
So that is going to do it with our list here this week. Did you have anything else you want to say to our lovely audience?
Have a safe week, everyone. Have a great time. By the time you hear this, I will be getting ready to celebrate my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. You will not hear the podcast again until after my birthday. So if you'd like to celebrate my birthday, this is a great time to do it.
Yes. So, in fact, if you are willing to celebrate, listen to the episode and drink twice every time I say indeed.
That's right. That'd be great for my birthday.
Yeah, and then by the time we talk again next week, folks, my feline grandkids will be here.
Woohoo!
Annie and Mimsy. I have not told Isaac yet that I'm going to change their names.
I'm sure he expects it.
Yeah.
What are their names now?
I didn't pay attention because I want Annie and Mimsy. We're lucky they're not kids.
Yeah, because they would be Annie and Mimsy.
Yeah. Hey, Mimsy, shut up, Mimsy.
Just so you could say, shut up, Mimsy.
Yeah, I mean, I did remember a comedian's joke that I laughed a little too hard at when my wife was pregnant about a guy that it may have been Louis C.K. or somebody, but contemplating the idea of when you have a kid, talking complete gibberish to them to make that their language. Just seeing what would happen.
Right, just give names to things, right? As long as you called it the same thing.
You would have to come up with words for every. Yeah, I mean, it couldn't.
As long as you called it the same thing, they'd learn it just like any other language. But you will have written a new language.
Yep. Gobbledygook. But yes, it's going to be another eventful week here, folks. But I think the last thing I have to say to you folks is read. The summer is coming up. We have some beautiful weather here in Portland, Oregon. It is a great time to open the windows, get a nice breeze in, crack open a good book, whether it's a physical book or an ebook or an audio book, however you get your books. Just enjoy books. They're the seeds for so much stuff that we love in entertainment, movies, TV, songs, lots of stuff. So crack open a good book, and if you read any of the books that we recommended this week, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Let us know.
All right. Anything else you want to say, or do you want to get back to writing your paper?
Well, I still have some work to do before I can go to sleep tonight, so.
All right. So we'll get the professor to work here, folks. Each Saturday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Good night.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.